You guys want to hear a scary story? If you want to sleep tonight, maybe save this for later or scroll past it. When I was a little kid, I lived in Prescott for a little bit with my parents from the time I was like, I don't know, 6 to 10 or 6 to 11, something like that. I lived in an extremely haunted house in Prescott, mostly because I did a seance as a child and had no idea what I was doing and never said goodbye or closed the portal, and that's a whole other story. One of the entities I would see a lot after doing that mistake when I was 6 years old was an old decrepit woman. When she would walk, it would sound like bones were cracking, and I saw her a lot more than I would like to admit throughout my childhood. I would always know she was coming because I could hear bones cracking and very deep guttural breathing, kind of like choking breathing, and that's how I would know she was around me. Now, this was when I was 7, I think. It was like the second year we moved to Prescott. I still believed in Santa at the time, okay? And I was so confident that I was going to catch Santa putting my presents under the tree, okay? So I have my plan of, getting under the Christmas tree. I decided I'm going to hide under the Christmas tree skirt. So that way I can see Santa. I can just lift it up and put the presents underneath the tree. Oh, but it wasn't Santa. Who came, was it? Now, I had waited. My sister and I normally went to bed at like 8. We had a pretty strict bedtime like when we were kids. It was like 8 or 9 or something. And in Prescott, obviously, it gets darker a lot quicker than it does in Phoenix or Scottsdale, a lot colder earlier, so people just go to bed earlier up there. So I get under the Christmas skirt like an hour or so after I go to bed. My mom turns off all the lights, it's pitch black in the house. So I was trying to, get under the Christmas tree skirt without her obviously seeing me, because I knew she was awake because I could hear the TV in her room. However, her door was shut, so I was like, perfect plan. So I creep under, I run through the living room. It's already dark and scary, but I'm not thinking about that at the moment. I'm thinking about I'm going to catch Santa in the act, and I was so excited. Run under the Christmas tree skirt, and then I sit and I wait. This is before phones, like iPhones, iPads, very obviously. I'm almost 30, so I had nothing to do but wait. Like, I didn't have an iPad to scroll on or anything like that. And I remember I started to feel scared, like, a few minutes after I had settled into my hiding spot. A couple minutes after that, I just felt very uneasy because it's pitch black. Like, every time I lift the skirt, I'm looking out to dark living room, right? My mom's TV, her room was behind living room, so I could hear it still on. So I'm like, okay, my mom's not going to sleep yet, so Santa's not going to come, Obviously now I know she is Santa, just wrapping my presents. And I hear the TV turn off, and I hear some movement. I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Like, my mom's going to bed. I'm about to see Santa. And then I hear a door open, but it's not from my mom's room. It's from somewhere else, over by where my room is and my sister's room. So I'm thinking maybe possibly the front door. Then I start to get really excited. So I put down the tree skirt because I was peeking through it. And it goes dead quiet. And all of a sudden, I hear the sound of bones cracking and raggedy breathing. I'm literally have chills retelling this story. Ugh. This entity messed me up so bad as a child, I can't even tell you guys. And the sound is coming from, sorry, thought I was getting a call, over by my room, I realize. And I am panicking. I start crying, but I'm holding my mouth because I don't want this entity to hear me. And I can just feel I can hear, not feel, dragging of a body, just kind of legs were dragging and the bones were cracking and they were getting closer and closer. Then it kind of stops completely, okay? Just kind of stops, and I'm like, okay, I'm trying to catch my breath. I don't hear anything. And I'm counting to 60 in my head, and I did it a few times, and then I go to peek out of the tree skirt. And I see the nastiest, decrepit, decaying pair of feet right outside the tree skirt, standing out there. And I screamed at the top of my lungs. I start freaking out. My mom, all of a sudden, I can hear the TV again. I don't think it ever turned off. I can hear sound again. I can hear, my mom and the TV and everything runs out, and she's just scolding the life out of me. She's like, what are you doing? You know you can't catch Santa. I can only imagine what's going on through her head at the time. She thinks her kid's just trying to catch Santa. No, I'm being haunted by a demon that's waiting for me outside the tree skirt on a holy day, right? That was one of my scariest encounters as one of my personal experiences, not from my babysitting stories. That just about put me over the edge, being that young. How real and how terrifying that was just awful. So, good luck sleeping tonight. Bye.
I found an old unplugged answering machine in my dad's basement, and then it played a message from me dated the following night. This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about the warning that I left for myself. I found it while I was cleaning out my dad's house after he died. He had been gone for almost 2 months by then, but I kept putting off the basement. My dad saved everything, old tools, broken appliances, boxes of receipts from the 90s, and the basement was so packed tightly that you could barely walk from one side to the other. I went down there one Saturday morning with trash bags and decided I wasn't leaving until I had cleared at least one wall. And that was when I noticed the answering machine. It was sitting alone on a shelf near the bottom of the stairs. It was one of those old black machines with a tiny cassette inside and a red light that blinked when there was a message. And the light was blinking. I stood there staring at the machine because it wasn't even plugged in and there wasn't even a cord attached to it either. My dad had gotten rid of his landline years ago, and I had never seen that machine before. I picked it up and checked the back. No batteries or a power cord, nothing. But the red light kept blinking. I should have put it down, but instead I pressed the play button. The machine clicked and then I heard static. A few seconds later, a woman started speaking. It took me a moment to realize the voice was mine. I sounded terrified. I was whispering so quietly that I had to hold the machine close to hear it. And the message said, "Tomorrow night, don't open the basement door." And there was a pause, and then my voice said, "Even if it sounds like Dad." The message ended. I stood there holding the machine, waiting for something else to happen, but nothing did. The light stopped blinking, and I pressed play again, but it wouldn't work. At first, I thought my brother was messing with me. He had been helping with the house and knew I hated going down into the basement alone. It seemed like the kind of stupid prank he might try if he thought it would scare me. I carried the machine upstairs and called him. He denied it immediately, and I asked how he would have gotten a recording of my voice. He said he didn't know and told me to throw the thing away. And then he asked why I sounded so nervous. I hadn't told him what the message said yet. I asked if he had ever seen the machine in Dad's house, and he said no. I sent him a picture of it, and he stopped joking. There was a time stamp on the small display. It showed the following night at 10:42 p.m. I assumed the date was wrong because the machine had been sitting without power for who knew how long. And then I noticed something else. In the recording, my voice had mentioned my hand. I hadn't heard it clearly the first time, so I held the machine beside my ear and pressed play again. And this time it worked. My voice said, "The cut on your palm is going to start bleeding again. Don't go downstairs looking for bandages." I looked at my hand, and about 10 minutes earlier, I had sliced my palm open at the edge of a broken cardboard box. It wasn't a serious cut, but I had wrapped it into a paper towel because I hadn't found any first aid supplies yet. And nobody knew about it, and my brother wasn't there. I hadn't spoken to anyone since it happened. I left the answering machine on the kitchen table and I went home, and I almost didn't return the next day. But I still had paperwork in the house, and the realtor was coming later that week. I couldn't leave everything unfinished because of an old recording that made no sense. I went back in the morning and stayed upstairs. I didn't enter the basement. I kept the basement door shut and pushed a chair under the handle, even though I felt ridiculous doing it. The answering machine was still on the kitchen table. The red light wasn't blinking anymore. Around 9 that night, I started gathering my things to leave. And then my hand started bleeding again. The cut had opened through the bandage. I went into the bathroom and checked the cabinet, but there was nothing there. My dad always kept medical supplies in the basement, and for a second I actually reached for the basement door. And then I remembered the message. I stepped away from it. I wrapped my hand in a clean dish towel instead and decided to leave. When I tried to start my car, the battery was dead. My brother said he could come get me, but he lived almost 40 minutes away. I told him to hurry, and then I went back inside and locked the front door. At 10:42, someone knocked from the basement. 3 slow knocks. My dad always knocked like that. Even when he came to my apartment, he would knock 3 times, wait, and then knock once more. I stood in the kitchen staring at the basement door, and a few seconds passed, and then came the 4th knock. I backed away, and from the other side of the door, my dad said my name. His voice sounded exactly the way it had near the end of his life, tired and a little raspy. He said, "Can you open this?" I covered my mouth with my hand because I almost answered him, and then he said, "I fell." And that was how my dad died. He'd fallen at home and couldn't reach his phone. I knew there was no way he could be on the other side of that door, but hearing him say it made every part of me want to help him. He knocked again. "Please, I can't get up." I started crying. I kept telling myself it wasn't him. Whatever was speaking knew how he sounded. It knew what happened to him, and that didn't make it my father. The basement handle moved. The chair underneath it scraped slightly across the floor, and the voice stopped sounding hurt. It became calm, and my dad said, "You left the machine down here with me." I turned towards the kitchen table and the answering machine was gone. I had seen it there less than an hour earlier, and I searched the counter and the floor, even though I knew I hadn't moved it, and the basement door began shaking in its frame. My dad's voice called my name again, louder this time, and then the answering machine started playing from somewhere downstairs. Through the door, I heard my own recorded voice whisper, "Don't open it." I waited outside on the front porch until my brother arrived. By then, the basement had gone quiet. We left the chair under the door and stayed away from it until morning. As soon as the sun came up, I took what I needed from the house and left. I never went back into that basement. And nobody believes the machine worked without being plugged in, but I know what I heard from behind that door. Anyway, good luck sleeping tonight.
They tried to set me up, but my intuition saved my life. Story time. So years ago, I was working at a warehouse when we got a new employee that we'll call Ashley. She was really sweet, kind, and relatable. I could talk to her about anything, and we'd probably still be best friends had this not happened. After about 8 months of working together, riding together, and talking every day at lunch, she sits down at lunch one day and tells me, "Hey, I started dating this guy that we'll call John. And John's kind of weird. Like, he's been asking me to do some weird stuff." And I said, "What kind of weird stuff?" Well, a few nights ago, John told me that he would pay me $20 to slap myself, so I did it, and he gave me $20. And I started laughing like, "Ashley, no, you didn't. You did not slap yourself for $20. She said, "Yeah, I did." The next night, he said, "If you let me slap you, I'll pay you $50. I said, "You let him slap you for $50? Like, what kind of relationship is this? I don't think this really is a relationship." Well, this crazy shit goes on for a few weeks, and every day she's telling us about these new things he's wanting her to do for money. How he's so good in bed. They have so much in common. It's the best relationship she's ever had. Well, one day on our lunch break, she tells me, "Last night, John paid me $1,000. And of course, my nosy ass, I was like, "Damn, girl, what did you do for $1,000? Like, y'all must have been getting freaky or something. It's a lot of money." She said, "Well, he had me eat something." And in my innocent little brain, I'm thinking, "What, a hot pepper? He paid you $1,000 to eat a hot pepper?" She said, "No, not a hot pepper." I said, "What, a flower? A leaf? A stick? A pine cone? Something like that?" She said, "No, it was something a little bit weirder." I said, "What, a dead bug? Like a roach or something?" Y'all, I was so green. I was so wet behind the ears. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I got tired of guessing. I said, "All right, just tell me, what did you eat for $1,000? She tells me her boyfriend paid her to eat a turd. Her own turd. A big turd that she had just laid. And when she told me that, I was more than taken aback. My jaw dropped. I said, "There ain't no way. You're lying to me." I said, "Why would you do that to yourself, Ashley?" She said, "Because I want to be with him and this is what he enjoys." And I started getting mad. Because that's my friend and I love and care about her. I don't want to see her get used and abused by some sicko for his own pleasure. To know that my own friend is lowering herself to this standard to make money, I'd rather her strip. We can dig through dumpsters. We can clean condos. We can scrub toilets. We have so many options to make money. And she knew that. We did side jobs all the time. We made good money. So she was doing this just to please him. And that's what scared me. Something in my mind clicked. And I started thinking on the way home, like, if he got her to do that for $1,000, what else will she do for money? And just how far is she willing to go to please him? And what else is he going to ask her to do for money or for him? Hurt a friend? Kill someone? You never know with people. My gut was screaming at me, "Leave that girl alone." So I started pulling away from her, and I could tell that she was really sad that I was pulling away, but I had to protect myself because I knew something was not right here. The next morning, I told her not to pick me up because I'm driving, and when I got to work, she spent the whole day trying to get me to agree to swing by her house after work, but I never went. No lie, that same damn night, my phone rings. It's Ashley. "Alicia, is there any way you can come over here and pick me up? Me and John got into a fight, and my stomach dropped. I just knew this was a setup." I said, "Girl, you have 2 cars. You didn't drive either one of them?" She said, "No, he picked me up and brought me back to his house. We got to an argument, and I'm really scared. I need a friend to come pick me up." And then I was torn, and I felt guilty because My gut's telling me do not go over there. This is a setup. But at the same time, what if she's in danger? So I said, you know what? I'll call the police for you and have them meet me over there. No, don't call the police. I don't want him to get arrested or anything. I said, well, then you must not be that scared. She said, no, I really am. I'm in fear for my life, Alicia. Please come get me. I said, well, the police need to be there if he's in that bad a shape. Like if he's acting up that much, I'm not going over there putting myself in danger. Y'all been eating turds and stuff. No, I'm not getting involved with that. So I hang up, I call 911, and an officer goes over there to do a welfare check on her. Y'all, the damn police officer called me back and said, ma'am, we don't know what's going on, but she's fine, he's fine. They said they haven't been arguing. They don't know what you're talking about. In that moment, I knew they were trying to set me up. They were going to do something to me if I went over there. From everything that she'd been saying at work, I knew this is what it was leading up to. I could feel it in my body. Don't go over there. And I'm glad I didn't. So I go to work the next day and Ashley's there and she's mad that I called the police the night before. And I told her, get over it. You told me that you were in danger. You were scared for your life. So I called the police. You should have wanted the police there. That makes no sense. I said, the only reason I can think that you didn't want the police there is because y'all was going to do something to me. And the way this girl looked at me, I could see it in her eyes. She was caught. So I did jump in her face and I let her know real quick, I'm not the one. Don't you ever try anything on me, bitch, because I will fight back. You might not make it out alive. I said, Ashley, I like you as a person and you've been a good friend to me up until this. And I don't know what this guy is getting you into or what y'all are doing, but you need to be done with it and changing your life. Or you're going to end up in jail, prison, or worse. The next day she wasn't at work and I found out her and him took off and there's no telling where they are. I've not ever seen them again. I may not be the most attractive, the smartest, or whatever, but one thing I've been blessed with is intuition. You know that feeling in your body that tells you, do not do this, do not go there, do not mess with that person. Whatever it may be that it's telling you, you have to listen to it. Because when you don't listen to that gut feeling, you underestimate it or you go against what it's saying, that's when you're going to get hurt or killed.
The person that sent me this story called it the pink lighter. By the way, if you have a story that you'd like to share with our glitch community about glitches in the Matrix, dreams, aliens, cryptids, or the paranormal, you can send it to this email address. And remember, we believe you. Hi, Auntie Matrix. Hi. This story revolves around a very specific pink soft touch clipper lighter. If you're a clipper person, you know that these soft touch ones are weirdly hard to find. I bought mine in London. I loved it. And because I was traveling back home, I was unusually careful with it. It was the only lighter I had with me. And I know that for a fact because I flew with it and airport security requires you to put all liquids in a separate bag. I was constantly aware of it because I didn't want to lose it. While I was in home, I spent some time staying with my sister-in-law before visiting my parents in another city. The pink lighter came with me everywhere. On my very last night at my parents' house, I was leaving a friend's place when I almost forgot the lighter on the table. I had already reached for the door when I looked back. I spotted it and I remembered thinking, oh, thank God I looked back. I picked it up and put it safely in my bag. Later that night, I got home. My mom let me in. I went to the bathroom, then came back into my room planning to have a cigarette. I took my cigarette packet and the pink lighter out of my bag, and I thought I should say goodnight to my mom before she falls asleep. So I placed them on the bed beside my bag. Her bedroom was literally next door. I walked over, opened the door, saw the lights were already off, and I said, I just wanted to say goodnight and thanks for opening the door. Closed the door and immediately walked back. I wasn't gone for more than maybe 20 seconds. When I got back, my cigarette packet was exactly where I had left it. The pink lighter was gone. Not moved, gone. I emptied my entire bag onto the floor. I searched under the bed, in the bathroom, in the hallway, in the bin. I retraced every step that I had taken, searched every pocket. It had simply vanished. But here's where it gets stranger. While emptying my bag, I found a random yellow lighter that I have absolutely no memory of ever owning or putting in my bag. I remember staring at it thinking, where the hell did this even come from? I eventually gave up and used that lighter instead. The next day, I flew back and stayed again at my sister-in-law's house before returning to London. That night, we were standing in the kitchen chatting, and for some reason, I suddenly told her the whole story about my disappearing pink lighter. As I finished talking, her eyes went wide. She said, wait, I found a pink clipper lighter yesterday. Then she added, it didn't work, so I threw it in the bin. She said that she'd been confused because she had no idea where it came from. According to my experience, that lighter had been with me hundreds of miles away at my parents' house when she supposedly found it. I've replayed the sequence in my head hundreds of times over the last year. There's simply no point in which someone could have taken it, no opportunity for it to disappear, and certainly no explanation for another lighter appearing in my bag instead. I know how unbelievable that sounds. I've tried to explain it in every normal way first because that's always my instinct, but no explanation has ever fit all the facts. I still think about that pink lighter all the time because it's the one experience I've had that genuinely makes me question whether reality is as fixed as we think it is. I'd love to know what you think. The end. What I think is reality is absolutely not as fixed as some people think. Stuff like this literally happens all the time. Things popping in and out of reality, popping out at certain times, popping back in different places and different times that make like literally no sense. We absolutely believe you. What I wonder sometimes is, are things popping in and out of reality? Or are we switching timelines? Because yes, we're switching timelines all the time, but like in these instances where something like disappears and then it reappears either same spot or somewhere else, days, months, weeks, whatever the fuck later, is it disappearing into another timeline and reappearing back into our timeline? Sometimes is it being taken by a house elf or some mischievous being and returned? Or are we switching into a timeline where it doesn't exist and then back into a timeline where it does exist, or into another timeline where it exists but in a different location? What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. I love you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Glitches in the Matrix.
Equally as terrifying as the stories that come out of Appalachia are the stories that happen in the deserts out west. This story tonight unnerved me more than most that I read. So grab a drink, grab a cozy blanket, and settle in while I tell you a scary story in my garden after dark. Welcome to Ghosts in the Garden. I live in Utah, and this happened to me when I was 17. My house at the time was in a very small town. The backyard faced empty fields and mountains that went for miles before you reached any other civilization at all. My best friend lived next door and shared this field as our backyard in a way, as his house was built on a different street that also backed up to this field. It was on a small cul-de-sac that I think there were supposed to be more houses built on, but they never expanded the town. This matters later in the story. I used to stay the night at my friend's house a lot in high school because I didn't have the best relationship with my parents. Every once in a while, we would wake up and hear dragging and a weird gargling sound from the back porch. His room was a basement room with a window well that went to the back porch. It would happen a couple times a month, but whenever we would gather the courage to check, nothing would be back there. This happened for years. This one night haunts my friend and I to this day. My friend was getting ready to move, so we would stay up all night playing games and watching movies. We decided to go on a drive, just to vibe. We hopped in his truck with the high beams on and swung out of the driveway, turning toward the field to use the cul-de-sac to turn around. The light illuminated this thing. It looked like a person, but it wasn't. It was naked, on all fours, abnormally large, and had particularly long limbs that seemed to fold under itself in an unnatural way. Its pale skin clung to it like it had been stretched onto it and didn't quite fit. But the part that still sends shivers down my spine was its face. Its jaw hung open, like a snake with an unhinged jaw, and its black eyes glistened in the light as it looked at us. But just as quick as it turned to see us, it quickly scurried backward, into the brush of the field. My friend and I were pale as ghosts. We both looked at each other like, "Did you see that too?" We were shaken. Let's just say, we tried to have a good rest of the night, but we couldn't believe what we saw. We ended up sitting there, in his basement, ready and waiting to hear that dragging sound again, but we never did. I don't live in that town anymore. There are times that I visit, though, and that empty field still feels like it's watching and waiting. And even though I can't see it, I always feel like it's still out there. I have never heard of a creature that looks like that, but I lived out west in the desert for a while, and there are definitely unexplained things that happen there a lot. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you have your own story to share, I would love for you to email it over to me. I'll see you next time when we meet out here in the garden after dark for another story. Bye.
Absolutely freaking out. I think I just experienced my first glitch in the Matrix. If you're new here, welcome to Creepy Storytime, where I share reported true, paranormal, spooky, weird, and unexplained stories. I love a good glitch story, so I actually came across this one. I thought it was really fun, so I'm going to tell it to you now. I don't know the woman's name, so we're just going to call her Emily for the story. So Emily was washing her bed sheets and pillowcases for not only her bedroom, but for the spare bedroom. So she takes the first round of bedding out of the dryer and puts it in the laundry basket. And then she takes the second round of bedding for the other room and takes it and puts it into the dryer from the washing machine. She says she makes sure to separate things by room because she's crazy like that, and she just has to have everything just so. So in other words, she knows she did not make a mistake of that. She proceeds upstairs to her bedroom so she can make the bed and go to sleep, which is why she did that load first to begin with. Okay, so first she grabs the fitted sheet and she puts that on. Second, she takes the comforter and she lays that out as well. And then she goes into the laundry basket and pulls out 2 pillowcases and she sets them on her bed because she is now going to turn around, grab the 2 pillows that she had sitting on a love seat in her room, and she was going to put the cases on next. Well, she thought she was. Okay, so when she turns back around with 2 pillows in hand, all of a sudden she notices those 2 pillowcases are just gone. And she's like, wait a second, what? So she's looking all around. She's not seeing it. She also makes note that these were very distinct pillowcases and the only ones like it that she owned. One had seashells on it and the other sea turtles on it. So she starts tearing everything apart looking for these things. She ripped the whole bed apart even though she just made it, even though those 2 pillowcases were sitting on top. She pulled up the comforter and then she pulled off even the fitted sheet, and she is looking all around her room, underneath the bed, all over, in the nooks, in the crannies, and she is finding nothing. She just says, I swear I looked everywhere and they were just gone. I swear I had them in my hands, placed them on the bed, and turned my back for seconds. So she's thinking to herself, all right, stop working yourself up. It's not a big deal. I'll figure it out. So she waited for the other load to be dried so that she could just go in there and get those pillowcases from the spare room or for the spare room and just use them for that night at least. So Emily goes, well, when I opened up the dryer, guess what was inside? The seashell pillowcase and the sea turtle pillowcase, along with the rest of the bedding for the spare room. She said, first of all, I would never do that OCD much. Second of all, I know I held them in my hand all the way upstairs. She says, I am getting serious chills typing this and my mind is spinning because what the heck happened? What actually just happened? Did I just experience a glitch? That is the burning question, Emily. All right, that was a quick one. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And even more importantly, what has happened to you that was glitchy like that maybe you just brushed off because it was like, nah, couldn't be, right? I love to hear those little nuances. If you have any kind of creepy story of your own, please feel free to send it in. And if you're interested in my Creepy Storytime merch, check out the link in my bio. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more Creepy Storytime.
So in case you're new here, I used to do house calls in the hills of the Appalachian Mountains, like off the grid, very desolate areas, but now I usually do house calls in the city. But this week I'm actually in a really rural area, like lots of Amish people, in Pennsylvania, place I've never really been to before, and I am loving it. I'm having such a good time. So yesterday I was telling everybody how I ended up on a side quest in some nice Amish people's basement, eating a donut with all the Amish kids, and then they took me to a tack shop after work and showed me all of the really nice Amish saddlery and like bridles and bits, and I was like, it's amazing because it's so hard to find things that are big enough for draft horses. So today I went back with some money, of course, because they don't take Apple Pay, and I found so many nice things. I bought a couple of things. I went back with my bridle, I went back with my bit, I went back with a halter. That's about it. And they made some recommendations. So I got a 6-inch snaffle bit for $7.50. $7.50. Incredible. And then I bought a halter, black, all black, synthetic halter, really thick material though. It's not the typical draft halters where it's like really thin and like typically the kind of halters that people will buy to send horses off to auction because they're like $20. I got a really nice synthetic one, $30. $30. Are you insane? That's crazy. And I showed the nice little Amish guy my bridle, and he's like, I don't think we make them. Like, we don't make them this big, but I'll talk to my guy who makes them. And so I'm kind of hoping that they can get one custom made for me. I will pay extra money for it because I know that's something I'll use all the time. So it was a great day. I really like working out there. The people are so nice for the most part. They're like really tidy. I haven't seen any bed bugs this week. Nobody has had fleas. It's been very enjoyable. Only thing is, some of my patients who are Amish, some of my patients are Amish, and those who are Amish tend to like obviously not have AC or anything, so it's like been really hot, but like, oh woe is me, first world problems. Everyone's been really nice. I actually have video a little bit of video of the tack shop. Obviously, like, I didn't want to be disrespectful, so I only took video where there were not other people in the store, so that's really limited, like, what I could show you. And I included a little video of my Poultrygeist. You're gonna see it, it's adorable. So this is the ceiling of the tack shop. There's like so many bits of so many different sizes. And then this is the work area in the back where they literally make everything. And then I was told to go to somebody's personal property, and they have like a little shed on the property, and they have this beautiful little produce garden and fresh cut flowers. I got myself some blackberry jam and I cannot wait to try it. And then this here is my Poultrygeist. It's a Poultrygeist. Say hello. Hi, what you got in there? Let me see, Mama. Ooh, look at you. Go on, eat, girly.
A woman sent me an email and said that she was lured to an abandoned building in 2001 by a woman that she met at a mall, and she was more so sharing this less as a complete story, but more to find out if anyone knew about this or had heard about similar cases in the Denver, Colorado area. But Melanie says that in December of 2001, she was working the holiday season at a shopping mall in Fort Collins, Colorado, and she was taking lunch break one day when a woman in her late 40s, early 50s approached her and told her that she absolutely loved her makeup and asked if she had ever modeled. The woman told Melanie that she sold makeup products and was going to be having a party at her house, and asked if Melanie would be interested in coming to the party as a model, where she would then test the makeup products on her, and that Melanie would be able to keep the products that she tested. She also told her that there would be a number of other prizes and that Melanie would not leave empty-handed. Melanie said she was 18, she was broke, and this sounded like a great deal to her because it would help her get some Christmas gifts for some of the women in her life. And so she accepted, and the woman gave her her card. The card appeared to be a legitimate business card for a makeup brand that she didn't want to name. She said they were very popular for decades and almost everyone knew someone who sold these products. The woman wrote an address on the back of the card as well as Thursday, 7 p.m. and gave it to Melanie. She also asked for Melanie's phone number, and Melanie gave it to her. But the next day, Melanie was off work, and she said she didn't really like driving at night, and so she just decided, since she was off work and she had nothing going on, she was going to drive by the house just so she knew how to get there for Thursday's party. It was daylight, and she just wanted to be less stressed when she drove there on Thursday night. And so she gets to the street, and she looks at the card to see the address and to determine which direction she should drive in, and she starts driving, assuming that there would be a house. After several blocks, the houses became further and further spaced apart, and there weren't even crossroads anymore. Eventually, the paved road ended entirely, and there was a blockade at the end of it, and there was only one building, which was an abandoned building that had Medic on the front sign. There was no discernible address on the Medic building, but when she turned around, she checked the address of the first house she passed. She was able to determine that the address that the woman had given her either was for the Medic building or it was for an empty lot next door. She was very confused by this and uncomfortable, and so she just decided to head home. But it occurred to her on the ride home that if she had arrived at night, someone could have easily blocked her in at the end of the road. Thursday came and went, and she didn't go to the party. But Friday morning, the woman called her, and she was furious, and she demanded to know why Melanie hadn't shown up at the party. Melanie explained that she just couldn't find the address, and the woman was kinder and said, no, we should try again. And Melanie confirmed the address with her, and the woman said, yeah, that's it. And she asked, when do you want to do it? And Melanie said, well, don't you have to schedule a party? And after this, the woman became very pushy, and she said, well, you agreed to this. You said you would do it. You owe me. Melanie, on the landline, simply said, I'm sorry, my mom needs the phone. I'm going to have to go now. She hung up, but the woman continued calling her house phone for weeks afterward, almost every day. Melanie said she went back and forth from being extremely angry and demanding that she show up to a party to being very kind and promising her all kinds of gifts and goodies. Even stranger, the woman continued calling the landline until the family finally moved. She obviously never found out what was this woman's deal, but she said, skip forward a few years, she was telling a friend this story, and her friend had mentioned that she had heard about a woman from the Denver, Colorado area who was luring women to an abandoned building so that her son could do horrible, horrible things to them. She said she wasn't sure if it was the same woman, but her friend told her that the woman she had heard about was using makeup and modeling as an excuse to get women to come out to the location she provided. Despite this, Melanie says she was never able to verify that this actually happened or find any details about this specific case online. So she's more so sharing this just to see if anyone from the area knows about this or could maybe give her a little bit of insight of what this woman really wanted. If you have any theories, any thoughts, any words for her, let her know. Melanie is her real name and she will be seeing the comments. And if you have a spooky, scary story time, something that you think nobody would believe or something that happened to you that still leaves you unsettled, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
A series of spooky stories, women's intuition. A few years ago, I had a gut feeling to reach out to an old high school best friend that I hadn't talked to in years. Something told me to check on her and just say, hey. I went to Facebook and seen that she had a child and moved to Florida. I don't know why, but something told me to reach out. Well, I didn't, and a month later, she died. She was shot by her ex-boyfriend in her apartment. Oh my God. To this day, I believe that it was God telling me to say goodbye to her. That is so fucking sad. When I was younger, my stepsister was diagnosed with leukemia, so hospital visits were not uncommon. I was at my dad's one day while my mom was at the hospital with my stepsister, and I got this horrible feeling. I started panicking, uncontrollably sobbing, and telling my dad that something was wrong and my sister wasn't okay. He told me that everything was fine and that I just needed a nap to calm me down. I went to take a nap, and when I woke up, I got the news that she had passed. When my mom was a kid, her dad was working really late. She had a dream that night that there was a man at the foot of her bed in a trench coat. She just knew that the man was there to tell her that her dad had died in a car wreck. She woke up screaming, "Daddy." The next day, my grandfather told her that he had fallen asleep at the wheel and woke up just before running off the road because he heard my mom scream, "Daddy." The morning my mom died, I woke up somewhere between 1 or 2 in the morning in a brief panic. Something felt off, but I was just into my second semester of college, so I brushed it off. Around 7, I woke up and immediately took my phone off of silent. I didn't know why, I just knew that I needed to. My dad called a little after 8. I knew before I answered. I was told that she had passed somewhere between 1 or 2 that morning. About 5 years ago, my family had a barbecue. I got an overwhelming feeling that I needed to call my cousin. When she answered, I asked if she was okay. She told me, "No, I think my mom died." I had a vision of her being carried out of her house on a stretcher. We're on our way to her house now. While she was saying this, my dad got a call from his brother, my cousin's dad, saying that he had just found his wife unresponsive in their bed. He hadn't even called my cousin yet. When I was in the 10th grade, I was at school one day and I had this weird gut feeling all day like something bad was going to happen. I kept brushing it off because I have really bad anxiety. Later on that night, I woke up to my mom crying. I asked her what was going on and she said my grandfather was having a heart attack. Then towards the end of 12th grade, one day at school, I had the same feeling that something bad was going to happen. Again, I brushed it off as just my anxiety. Later on that night, I was getting ready for bed. My mom came into my room to tell me that my grandfather was just rushed to the hospital and we had to go. Turns out that he went into cardiac arrest and we lost him that night. In 2021, I had my home remodeled. The living room was my new favorite space because of this gorgeous chandelier, which has blades that unravel when powered on to cool the living room. That sounds actually terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. My 7-year-old had just stretched out on the floor directly under the fan, and I got an overwhelming feeling that he should get up and join me on the couch. Literally 2 minutes after he got up, the chandelier crashed onto the floor directly where his head was. This thing weighed over 200 pounds, and with it dropping from a 12-foot ceiling, it would have killed my baby. Holy fuck. I literally have this fear that every fan is going to come crashing down from the ceiling. So sitting underneath those is just a no. One time when we were on our way to the airport back from Mexico, I had fallen asleep, like a very deep sleep, because I had an emergency surgery. It was 3 a.m. and not a soul on the road. For some reason, I woke up from a dead sleep just in time to see a man on the side of the road flagging us down. He was right around a curb and he had no way of seeing him beforehand. I told my husband, go, go, go. He said, what the hell, why? Maybe he needed help. I was like, with what? He said, maybe his car broke down. I was like, there was no car in sight. Later, I heard that on that stretch of road, people who actually slow down get mugged, R-worded, or unalived. I have no clue why I woke up from a deep sleep like that. Very exciting news. I have long-form content coming soon, but it's going to be on another platform. I'm very, very excited about it. I'm going to have my own website and my own app. It's currently in the works. They are building my website right now, and I am signing contracts in the next couple of days. So if you would be interested in seeing longer form videos, more in depth, being a part of a community, being able to decide like what you want to see next to my content, like certain story times or conspiracy theories, like I had posted the other day, to like send me down a rabbit hole or whatever, I will be keeping you guys updated as that comes. Like I said, I haven't got the contracts yet. They're working on the legal stuff. So I will update as soon as I possibly can. But I was too excited not to share that. So I will see you guys at the next episode.
Did you know that every theatre in London is haunted? Well, what I told you there isn't entirely the truth. This is a common superstition in the theatrical world and doesn't include modern venues. But if you push those aside, then yeah, every historical venue in London is haunted, besides one, of course, but we'll get onto that later. Theatre Royal Drury Lane is actually considered the world's most haunted theatre, and homes a spirit named the Grey Man, who is often seen during the day wearing a powdered wig, a grey cloak, and a 3-cornered hat, crossing from one side of the upper circle to the other and then melting into the wall. Spooky. The Lyceum Theatre has an interesting ghost story where a couple were sitting in the balcony, looked downwards and saw a severed head in the lap of a lady in the stalls. Nobody knows where the spirit came from, but people speculate that perhaps it was a family that lived on the land, and then years later the Lyceum was built on top of this. Now, the Adelphi Theatre is said to be haunted by actor-manager William Terrace. Around about 1897, Terrace was at stage door when he was rushed and stabbed. As he was dying, his final words were, "I will be back." And of course, years later, there have been many sightings, many strange knockings and sounds, which have all been attributed to the spirit of Mr. Terrace. Honestly, there are so many we could be here all day, but you're probably wondering, what is the one venue that isn't haunted? Well, let me bring you back to 1905, when a steel rod holding up a Charing Cross platform broke. The platform collapsed, leading to much rubble and a massive brick wall slamming against the Playhouse Theatre, which was under renovations at the time, which unfortunately resulted in 6 people tragically losing their lives. From then on, it is said that some of the spirits, among others, now haunted the venue. Until recent renovations, when they did something quite clever. In this photo, which I found on Google Images, it shows a face statuette embedded in the wall. In fact, hidden behind that is a horse head skull statuette, which of course has the significance of warding off spirits. And maybe that's exactly what happened, because ever since then there has not been a sighting or anything strange. For now, at least. So in conclusion, I guess that superstition from the start is kind of right and kind of wrong, but more wrong than right, I'd imagine. Lol.
Spooky scary story time. So a couple years ago, my brother had surgery in this really big hospital. The same hospital where my son had all of his cancer treatment at. So this hospital has different floors, right? And every floor is specific for a certain thing. It'll have like ICU, it has a floor for like the children, it has labor and delivery, and then it has a floor where my brother was at, which is the recovery floor. So he said he was getting ready to go to bed, right? Nobody stayed with him overnight. It was just going to be him in that room. So he was getting ready for bed, and he saw a little boy walk into the room. And he thought for a second, like, am I sharing my room with somebody else? I thought I was by myself. So he sees a little boy come in, and the little boy turns the corner and hides behind the hamper. The hamper where you put, like, the gowns that they let you use at the hospital. So he said he saw a little boy run behind there, and he thought to himself, like, did this kid get confused? Like, and my brother said he tried to get out of bed, but he couldn't. The surgery that he had was just, he was unable to do it. And the nurse comes in, and my brother starts questioning her, like, am I sharing my room with somebody else? So, you know, he starts telling her he's seen a boy come in, and maybe the boy is lost. To which she replies that he's not the first person that has made that comment about the room. And there's no way that there can be a little boy in the room. Like, 1, it's past visiting hours, and 2, this is a floor for adults only. The children's floor is on a whole different level. My brother wasn't really scared. He was just more of confused, I guess. Like, why would this little boy want to make itself known by my brother? And then when we talked about it, I mean, we've seen a little boy in this house forever. Could it just, like, have been him? With him at the hospital, like, letting him know everything was going to be okay?
Movie theaters don't exist. Now, hear me out. When is the last time you've seen a new movie theater being built? I mean, think about it, right? In every town, there are the same exact theaters that have been there for years and years. And it's like you never see these things being constructed. So, are they even real? And when you think about a theater, right? On the outside, it just doesn't make sense because it's just this small square building. But when you go inside, there's just endless amounts of spaces. Okay, there's sometimes 20, 25 theaters in a megaplex. But from the outside, how do they fit all of these theaters in that building? right? And with all the exits and in all the different directions that these theaters face, like the layout just doesn't make sense to me. So the question is, how in the world do these things function? And also, when you think about it, it's kind of creepy because if just one person goes and sees a movie, right, they don't cancel that show, right? You still get to see that movie. And sometimes the theaters sit completely empty while there is a movie playing. So why are they showing movies when no one's even watching them? What is the point of that? Now, if you talk to anyone who's worked at a movie theater, they'll tell you the same thing. There are a lot of creepy things that happen. There was this man named Andre. Andre said that one night he was bored and he wanted to go see a movie. So he goes to his local theater and goes inside and he goes up to this kiosk. He said as he looked through the kiosk, he found this movie called Mystico. He said, that's strange. I've never heard of it. I haven't seen any trailers for it. Why not? Let's give it a shot. So he gets a ticket. And then he goes to the concessions and he starts talking to them. Hey, have you guys seen that movie Mystico? And none of them seem to know what he's talking about. We've not heard of that movie. We didn't even know we were playing that movie. And he's like, yeah, I haven't heard of it either. So then Andre follows his ticket and it leads him down a series of hallways all the way to this theater on the end. Now, he goes inside this theater and he said the first thing he noticed, which was really odd because he'd been to this theater many times, is all of the seating looked very old. It wasn't stadium seating. It wasn't these recliners. It was these wooden chairs. And he said, everything about this theater looked like it was from like the 1930s, 1940s. Nothing had been updated, unlike the rest of this theater. So he just went and he sat down in the middle row. We said the theater was already dark and the projector was just playing a series of just weird like trailers for movies he had never even heard of. And he said finally the movie came on and he said this movie just really didn't make no sense. It was just people walking around in just an enclosed room. And he watched this for about 20 minutes when finally he said, you know what, I'm out. Like, I don't like this. He said, but that's when he realized like he didn't pay attention to anybody that had came in the theater or anybody that was around him. And he said, as he started to focus his eyes onto the seats all around him, he said there were all of these people. He said the theater was packed. But these people weren't sitting in their chair. He said some of them were standing. Some of them were walking back and forth through the aisles. He said, but something was off about them. They did not look human. And he said they almost seemed to be very robotic, doing the same thing over and over again. So he slowly got up and he walked around each one of these people that were just standing. He said as he started to walk down the stairs to the exit, he said he looked back and the theater was completely empty. Everyone was gone. So he hurried to the exit and he got out of there. So the next day he goes back to the theater and he's like, hey, what's up with this movie Mystico? And he said, the guy behind the counter's like, I don't know what you're talking about. We don't play a movie called Mystico. He said, no, I watched it last night. I was in theater, whatever. And it was playing. They said, we don't have a theater, 26, 27. He said, no, I was in there last night. I have my ticket stub. And he went to go reach for the ticket stub. He didn't have it. He couldn't find it. It wasn't in his wallet anymore. But he told him, I could show you. Let me show you. So he said the employee went with him into the theater and he showed him where, he had gone in, except there wasn't a theater there. It was just an exit. And they told him, "Sir, are you all right? Like, is everything okay? Maybe you should go home." And so he said he left, but he never could figure out what that movie was, how he seen it, and how he could have watched this movie that just didn't exist.
One of my favorite mysteries from ancient history is something that very few people seem to talk about or even know about. Because long before airplanes, satellites, or modern technology, the ancient Romans were recording metallic objects, phantom ships, silver rain, and entire armies moving through the sky. And some of these accounts were written down by the most respected historians of the ancient world. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying the Romans saw UFOs. I'm not saying they encountered aliens. But I do think there's something fascinating about reading what these people claim to have witnessed thousands of years ago and realizing that in some cases, we still don't know exactly what they saw. So one of the strangest stories tells of a battle in which a mysterious metallic disc-like object supposedly fell from the sky. And the Romans viewed it as a divine sign and a gift from the gods because that event was followed by a massive Roman victory. And this wasn't the only time the Romans described something resembling a shield in the heavens. In 218 BC, during the terrifying days of the Second Punic War, ancient accounts claim that strange phantom ships were seen in the sky above Rome. So think about that for just a moment, that image. More than 2,000 years ago, people looked up from the streets of an ancient city and claimed to see what appeared to be like ships sailing through the heavens. Decades later, in 173 BC, a Roman historian recorded another bizarre event near the ancient city of Lanuvium, and according to his account, a great fleet of ships appeared in the sky. Not one, an entire army of ships. Then in 76 BC, there's an account that's preserved, and it's of something even stranger. A spark appeared in the heavens, seemingly coming from a star, and it grew larger and larger until it appeared to be the size of a moon, and before rising back into the sky as what was described as a torch of light. And then there was, of course, the famous Seneca, the Roman philosopher who wrote about mysterious beams of light that suddenly appeared in the sky, and according to ancient descriptions, these lights didn't simply flash on and off and then disappear. They remained suspended and motionless in the heavens for days before then suddenly vanishing. But perhaps one of the most haunting accounts came in the 1st century AD. A Jewish historian by the name of Josephus described a series of terrifying signs that supposedly appeared before the Jewish-Roman War, and among them were armies and chariots seen hurtling themselves through the clouds. Josephus himself understood and believed that this sounded crazy, yes, but he essentially admitted that this account would seem like a fable if there hadn't supposedly been eyewitnesses who claimed to have seen it as well, not just him. And then in 196 AD, ancient sources recorded something that sounded almost impossible. Under a perfectly clear sky, a strange silver-like rain reportedly fell from above. People collected the metallic substance, but according to the story, it later disappeared. Now, of course, ancient people interpreted the world very differently than we do today. Meteors could, become divine weapons. Atmospheric phenomena could become heavenly armies. Strange clouds might be transformed into ships and chariots through fear, belief, or, centuries of retelling. Sure, and maybe that's all that these were, is just stories. But there's something strangely magical about imagining ancient Rome at night, with no electric lights, no airplanes overhead, no satellites crossing the stars, just darkness and thousands of people staring into the sky that must have seemed endless to them. So what did they actually see? Was it natural phenomena they couldn't understand and they explained it the only way that they could? Were they stories exaggerated over centuries? Or did the people of the ancient world occasionally witness something in the heavens that even we today, with all our modern knowledge, would struggle to explain? Because civilizations disappear, empires always fall, languages are forgotten, but for thousands of years, human beings have continued to be looking up at the same sky and always wondering what else might be looking back at us. Let me know what you guys think in the comments.
I had a patient that I was working with that kept warning me. I was a nurse's aide at a hospital, and I feel like for me the hardest part of the job was working with patients who had dementia or got confused very easily. Now, obviously, it was due to them having an illness, and so you do feel bad for them. You could always tell when somebody was confused because they would get lost a lot, they would repeat questions, or you could tell that they were scared because they didn't understand what was happening. I think that was the saddest part. There's one specific patient that I don't think I will ever forget. He was an older man, and his name was Robert. And he had like a severe infection, and the doctors told us that this severe infection has gotten to his brain, and he'll go like in and out of consciousness. So some moments he was perfectly normal. He would even tell jokes. He'd ask about my family a lot. He would talk about his life. And then others, he would become completely terrified. Like, for example, one night I was putting him down for bed. I was getting him ready, and he grabbed my wrist. He looked directly in my eyes, and he said, "Don't let them move me after midnight." And so I was just trying to reassure him. I said, "Don't worry, Robert. Like, you're going to stay here all night." And then he squeezed my hand tighter, and he's like, "You don't understand. They moved me last time." And I was like, "What do you mean they moved you?" And he said, "They moved the ones that aren't getting better." It definitely made me feel uneasy at the time, but I just chalked it up to his mental illness. A couple nights later, it was around 1 a.m., and I was assigned to his room, and I noticed that his call light was on, so I went into his room, and I walked in, and he was sitting straight up in his bed, and he had this empty chair next to him, and he told me, "You're late." And I said, "Oh, what do you mean I'm late?" He pointed to the chair next to him, and he said, "I told her that you would come back." And when I looked at the chair, nobody was in it, obviously. I gently asked him who he was talking about, and he started crying, and he said, "The woman keeps asking me when you're going to be leaving." After I left his room, I went and I checked his charts to see if anybody had visited him recently, and nobody had. That next morning, the doctors actually told me that his condition has gotten worse, and they're going to move him to another room for more intensive care. I went to go say goodbye to him, and he was very, very calm, and he grabbed my hand, and he said, "You're going to stop coming here soon." And I said, "How do you know that?" And he said, "Because you're not supposed to see what happens next." After that, I just kind of told him that I hope he feels better soon, and then I went along with my shifts. And 2 weeks later, I did find out that he did pass away from his condition. But the strange part about that is the nurse that took over my shifts in the new intensive care unit, she told me something that was strange. I guess Robert asked about me every single night, and when the nurse asked me why he cares so much for me, he said it's because I was the only one who listened to him when he would tell the truth. To this day, I don't know if Robert was losing his mind or if he was the only person in the hospital who knew things that the rest of us did not.
A man was watching me from the bushes. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage, where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy, because it's creepy cozy time at the Creepy Cozy Cottage. Give me a follow so you never miss a story. Me and my old best friend have been in a ton of crazy situations because we were always doing something stupid. I think it was December 2024, one night, we got the bright idea to hang out with some boys and drive around a while. Her mom wasn't home, and I would say it was around 2 a.m. when they dropped us off a short walk from her house. After we drove away, we started walking back. It was super dark since the area wasn't lit up, but we didn't mind because we had our phone flashlights. Right before we got to her house, we stopped in her neighbor's yard. It was huge with a long stretch of bushes that led into the woods. We stood there because we couldn't decide if we wanted to go home yet or hang out with other people. We spent about 5 minutes talking about the boys we had just been with, basically having a little debrief. Then I looked behind her. Standing in the bushes was what looked like an old man, just watching us. He was so close to my friend that it scared me we hadn't noticed him sooner. He was facing me, so I immediately grabbed her hand and said, "There's someone behind you." The look on my face must have said everything, because she knew I was not joking. She took off running so fast that she let go of my hand, and I ran right behind her. We cut through the short wooded path that led to her house. She quickly unlocked the gate to the backyard, left it wide open, and we sprinted up the stairs into the house. I think we both completely forgot about it the second we got inside because we were so focused on being quiet and not waking up her grandpa. For me, though, something felt different that night. The next few days, I felt almost detached from the world. I can't really explain it, but I was constantly on edge. Every night, I locked my bedroom door because I didn't feel safe. One night, I went with my dad to pick up my sister from work. While we were driving, I suddenly felt something grab my leg. I immediately turned on my phone flashlight, freaking out, but my dad just brushed it off and said it was probably a bug. The thing is, I remember it feeling like an actual hand grabbing me. A few days later, my friend called me after she got home from school. She sounded panicked. The police just came to my house, she said. I asked why. She replied, they were asking for Ring camera footage from the night we snuck out. At first, I thought we were about to get caught for sneaking out and hanging out with those boys. Then she said, no, you don't get it. A man was found deceased a short walk from my house. My mind immediately started racing. What if that was the man we saw? How did he pass? What if the person I saw standing in the bushes was his actual murderer? Or what if I saw his ghost? Is that why I'd felt so uneasy ever since that night? After we hung up, I went straight to Google to see if it was true, and it was. There was an article with a picture of an older man who had been found deceased. According to the article, he had gone missing the same night we snuck out and was found the following morning. I'm not entirely sure if it was the same man I saw standing in the bushes. It was dark, and I don't want to claim something I'm not 100% certain about. A few days later, my friend told me the police had checked the Ring camera footage, but didn't find anything related to the man. I haven't looked back at the police reports since then, but I remember reading that he was around 70 years old and had underlying medical issues. To this day, I still don't know who I saw standing in the bushes that night. It still haunts me and is one of the scariest experiences of my life. Let me know what you think, and if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
I'm not necessarily a firm believer of the paranormal, but me and 3 of my friends went on an unused trail in the middle of a forest at around 2 a.m. after a hangout. We walked around for hours, taking videos and pictures, and eventually splitting up because 2 of us had to get home. It was just me and the remaining friend at around 3 a.m. when we captured this video. We were about a mile into the trail. We didn't notice anything unusual in the moment until I looked back at the footage. Within the first 2 seconds, an unexplained voice can be heard in the recording. I did more research into the location, and there used to be a children's cemetery a few yards away from where we were.
Is this where the creepies?
My parents and I went to the beach for a couple of days and stayed at my uncle's apartment there. The apartment buildings each have their own underground garage, which have storage units for big trash cans and general storage. My parents and I went down to take the trash out, and the whole time had this very weird feeling, like we were being watched or followed. I've always had a special inclination for the supernatural, often seeing shadows and feeling the presence of something that's not really there. Being in this place, I felt something stronger than anything I've ever felt. I decided to take some photos around the garage to see if I was just imagining things or if there was really something there. And what I caught on camera confirmed those earlier feelings. I took this video in an office that I used to work in. The place was very much haunted, and things like this happened all the time. This was the only time that I had the guts to record it. I was completely alone on this floor since all of my coworkers were in a meeting.
Words a wife should never say. According to my husband, there are 2 words that a wife should never, ever say to her husband. And the first is a word so terrible, so insulting that it cuts right to the bone. I said the first word after I had asked my husband for some help, You know, just a little effort around the house. We're both working full times, and sometimes it's easy to let the chores get away from you. But I noticed that my husband wasn't cleaning anything at all. He said to me, "Do you think my grandfather ever cleaned a bathroom? No, that's a woman's job." And this, of course, started an argument. He went on quite a tangent, including mentioning how mad that he was. Sometimes he had to ask me to make dinner. He just wanted me to make dinner and have it ready when he wanted it. Well, I called him childish. The first forbidden word. He got so furious, he ended up punching a hole in the drywall, and I had to beg him to stop before we had a doctor bill that we couldn't afford. The second word is an even more grave offense. So unforgivable, so dastardly that to even let them pass your lips is punishable by death. Capital punishment. And I said the word because I was exhausted. The happy memories of our marriage seemed as far away as like my childhood, okay? Miserable days just turn into forgotten weeks, and soon you are measuring the months in fights. And you just, you wonder how many years you have left. I didn't think I could stand one more argument. So I mentioned it. Didn't even say my mind was made up or anything. I just let the word leave my mouth. Divorce. The second forbidden word. This time he did more than punch the wall. Once he was done, I told him I got the picture. We made a vow, something unbreakable. And if our marriage wasn't happy, then it must have been my fault, failing my wifely duties. I told him, "You're right." So I planned him a little outing. I said, "When was the last time you went fishing?" He couldn't remember. I even packed everything for him, his kayak and his fishing gear, and I packed him a lunch and a 6-pack. I told him to just go and enjoy the day, and by the time that he got back, everything would be clean and dinner would be hot and ready. I was lying. After he left, I followed close behind in my car. I watched from the shoreline with binoculars. The slob brought the 6-pack out on the water with him. 10 in the morning, and he's knocking him back. He'd already eaten the sandwich I had given him, which I put a little extra ingredient in. And let's just say there was a reaction with the alcohol. I watched him pass out. I saw him tip over in the kayak, just floating upside down. He was completely underwater with empty beer cans just floating all around him. And here is a word that every woman should practice in the mirror. Murder.
Would your beloved pet dog or cat eat you if you passed away in the house? The short answer is yes, both of them absolutely would. I work full-time as a funeral director, and thankfully this is very uncommon because naturally most people pass away in hospitals, nursing homes, are found within a very short space of time. Pass away in the community and are immediately found. However, every now and then somebody will pass away at home with just them and their beloved pet and not be found for some time. So both pets will try and see if the owner is responsive by initially licking them. After just a few hours, if the licking breaks through the skin, cats will eat small soft tissues such as ears, nose, fingers, toes, things like this. After slightly longer, dogs will then start to scavenge as well. However, they will eat larger parts of the body as opposed to the cat, which is obviously slightly smaller anyway, depending of course on the species of dog as well. It's like hardware inside the pet's brain to survive. It's built in, just like your pet cat could have 3 meals a day, yet see a mouse running across the garden and still kill it and eat it. It's programmed into it to do that. So they will eventually do it. Exactly the same with dogs. They will scavenge any little bit of food. You'll know when you're out and about walking them. It might not mean that they're hungry. They're just programmed to eat what they see when they can, as a natural instinct to survive. And I mean, if I was passed away, and hopefully those circumstances have never happened, in which I'm in the house alone with my lovely kitties, but I wouldn't hold it against them. I mean, how could I? I wouldn't be here to complain about it. But on a serious note, with this sort of thing in mind, if you do have any, elderly neighbours or people that live on their own and you see them out and about in the community every now and then, or even, their routine of twitching their blinds in the morning or wherever it may be, and you don't hear from them for a number of days, just knock on their door and see if they're okay. There's no harm in it. The worst they can do is say, go away and get a bit of a mood with you for doing it and disturbing them, but you're better that than them in the house and ultimately left behind with their pet. So just always check that somebody's okay if you don't hear from them for a number of time. It's for the greater good, but yes, pets will eventually do it. Don't hold it against your four-legged friends. It's naturally programmed into their brains, and thankfully, folks, it very rarely happens. But every now and then, if somebody's passed away and they don't have friends or family and they're in the house for some time, it can happen. So that's transparency for you. Hope you found that interesting.
This story has to do with a little boy who went missing in the Appalachian Mountains, and when they found him, he wasn't the same. I originally heard the story in Spanish. I'm going to go ahead and translate it to English and tag the original person right down here. The story was originally submitted by the mom. So the little boy's name is Matthew. So Matthew's mom says that her and her family went camping. They went camping in the Appalachian Mountains. They rented an RV and they spent the whole weekend out there. Everything was perfectly fine. On the last day, as they're getting ready to pack up and leave, Matthew kind of wanders off. She doesn't think much of it. She's thinking that maybe he's just like going to be nearby. As they were getting ready to leave, they start to call for Matthew to come back because they're leaving, and Matthew is nowhere to be found. They start kind of panicking at this point because no one has really seen Matthew in a while, and he's a little boy. As time goes on, they get more and more nervous, and they decide to call the park rangers. Park rangers show up with volunteers and start getting ready to comb the surrounding areas because they're like, where could this little boy have gone? Just when they're getting ready to literally lose it, Matthew just very calmly walks out from the woods towards them. One thing that the mom says is that the moment she saw Matthew, she was relieved, but at the same time, something about him felt off. She said that she knows her son very well. He has always been terrified of everything. He's afraid of the dark. He's afraid of bugs. He's afraid of spiders. Any little thing like that freaks him out. So she can't understand why Matthew wandered off on his own in the first place and how he came back so calmly. Regardless, everything's okay. Matthew has been found. They get home, and she says when they get home is when the real terror begins.
On the way home, while they were sitting in the RV, Matthew was acting extremely strange. The mom says that Matthew would just kind of stand there or sit there and stare out the window, almost like he was contemplating on his whole life existence, that he went from being a child, a little boy, to now he's this mature old man. He was extremely sophisticated. The mom says that from that day is the day that her son's childhood got ripped away from him. Once they get home, the first thing that Matthew says to his mom is, "Mom, I'm gonna go take a shower, I'm going to bed." Mind you, Matthew has always needed his mom for everything, but he went and took a shower and went to lay down. When the mom went in to kind of tuck him in, Matthew looked at her and said, "Can you take that nightlight out of here?" The mom was a little confused because Matthew has always been afraid of the dark, but this Matthew wanted nothing to do with that nightlight. So she took it with him, and then she says that Matthew went and put both his arms on his chest, crossed, and he just laid down and went to sleep. As the weeks go by, Matthew's behavior continues to change. Though a lot of times I'll just find him in his room staring out the window, or they'll see him picking up random objects from the house, like a cup or a plate, and he'll just be looking at it as if he's never seen a cup or a plate before. The mom starts to talk to the husband about all of this, all of her concerns. She's pretty much like, "That's my son. That's physically my son. It looks like my son, but that's not my son." Then they get a call from the school. They're thinking, great, the school's gonna call and complain about his behavior. Matthew apparently had always struggled with math, so when they called the parents into the school, the teacher was actually praising Matthew, saying how intelligent he was, that he was a straight A student, that he shouldn't even be in second grade because he was so intelligent, which the parents were like, this is not the Matthew that we knew from a couple weeks ago. Who is this? They then decided to take him to go see a therapist. The therapist, every single therapist that Matthew went to would say there's nothing wrong with Matthew. Matthew's great. He's so intelligent. He's so well educated, praising Matthew. This leaves the parents even more confused because remember, before all of this, Matthew was your average second grader. The way that these therapists and the teachers and everything are describing him, they're describing him as this very mature, sophisticated, super educated man. They're talking about their second grader, who's how old are you in second grade? 7 or 8? More time goes on, and the mom's name is Laura. Laura figures something out that literally sends chills down her spine. She finds out that her son Matthew does not sleep at night. He stays up all night talking to someone in his room. There's been many nights where she'll go check up on him and she would hear him talking to someone. And then when it gets close to like 6 a.m., he lays down in bed in that same position and pretends to be asleep all night. But still, there's nothing they can really do about it. Like the parents, Laura and her husband, talk about it, but there's nothing they can do. Until one night, Laura is home alone with Matthew. Matthew's in the kitchen coloring. She said there were times where like he would act like a regular kid, but then there would be other times where he would act like this adult. So that night, Laura's in the kitchen cooking, Matthew is coloring, and she notices that Matthew's looking at her, like smiling at her, but like a very weird, like menacing smile. And Laura finally goes up to him and is like, Matthew, like what's going on with you? Like what's different? Like talk to me, what happened? Matthew just sits there and continues to kind of smile at her with that weird menacing smile. And then Laura decides to ask something that she wishes she had never asked, but she went ahead and asked Matthew. She goes, where is my son? What happened to Matthew? And her son Matthew responded with, Matthew's perfectly safe, playing in the woods. He's very happy. You don't have to worry about him. She's of course terrified by this answer and goes to her husband and talks, and they're freaking out. To them, it's confirmed that this little boy living in their house is not their son. That's not Matthew. Matthew's still out in the woods. So then who's this little boy? Like, what are they gonna do with this little boy? They can't get rid of the little boy. They can't abandon him. They can't do anything to this little boy. Everyone's gonna think that they're crazy, or they're like, you know, literally going insane. Like they can't do anything to this little boy, but they don't know what to do to try to figure out what actually happened to their son. It's been months since all of this happened, and Laura says that there's times where the little boy behaves like her son, and she gets a little glimpse of hope, like, oh, maybe this is all in my head, maybe this is actually my son. And then other things will happen when she's like, that's definitely not my son, I don't know who that is. And that's literally where the story ends. As Laura is writing the story out, or like texting the story, emailing the story out, she writes how as she's typing out the story, Matthew is currently in his room pretending to be asleep. What would you do in that situation?
Get your late night snack. This is Last Thread Before Bed, episode 27. This is a little series where I read scary stories from Reddit before I go to bed, and I try not to get nightmares. So boom, let's get into it. So tonight's story is on subreddit Ghost Stories. Now this dude wrote 2 separate stories, and I seen the opening line said, my ghost story, first part written by my sister about when we visited the Queen Mary back in the 1970s. I seen that and was like, yep, here we go. So this user's name is Murky600. So continuing where I left off, I asked what she remembered, her version of events. You were circa 2nd grade and still very much in the early stages of learning how to read. We were standing shoulder to shoulder with our hands on the outside railing of the Queen Mary's outside deck, looking out toward the ocean. We left mom and dad out of sight and only relatively nearby to run over to see more of the ocean view. We stopped at a nice, open, and quiet spot. No one was close by to where we stood viewing the ocean harbor. In the near distance was an airplane towing a banner advertising an upcoming beach concert. You stood there, we were trying to sound out loud the words on the banner and going very slowly as a beginning reader. After a short time of you struggling to read the banner out loud, I heard a woman's voice right behind the 2 of us. For just half a second, I thought mom had come up behind us, but then realized the voice wasn't mom's. But this friendly sounding woman was gently sounding out the next syllable whenever you'd stop reading out loud when you were having trouble. Yeah, hell no. But the woman sounded quite nice and was gently helping you along whenever you came to any hard combination of letters. You followed suit in perfect timing with her instructions. But by the end of the banner's message though, I lost patience and I spoke out loud the very last syllable right at the moment I was turning around to smile and thank the woman for her help, but was confronted with, whoops, this can't be. There was absolutely no one around behind us, not just right behind us where the helpful woman should have been, but no one in that entire section of open deck, i.e. no place for anyone to duck and hide. Too spooky for me, and I decided we better go back ASAP to where we left mom and dad. My part, funny thing is, I remember the lady. I do mean lady, standing next to me before my sister arrived. Her face was kind of unremarkable. She had old lady flower dress, purse, maybe gloves, formal. Big fan of QM. Going on about what a beautiful ship, she asked me, don't you think so? I was a polite kid, so I said something like, yeah, it's neat. I was busy looking at the other ships in the harbor. Then my sister arrived and the above narrative took place. I don't recall her speaking when my sister remembered her talking. I thought she left already. My other ghost story, The Shadow. It was a dark and cold Christmas night. Seriously. Northern Minnesota, Christmas Eve with family. Outside was well below zero. My aunt and uncle's house. Very old, very haunted. My cousin aunt will tell you. Yes, it has spirits. They all have their own stories. I was about 17 and visiting from warmer climate. We were opening presents at night, as is our northern custom. I was sitting on an odd spot on the carpet/floor in the living room. Everyone else had chairs. I recall we were all laughing at something, a joke or such. You know, family get-togethers. Then it happened. Suddenly, there was a loud boom from the dining room, which really was just the dining table on the far side of the room. Sounded like a heavy slab of wood fell over. I felt it through the floor. Quickly, I turned to the right and saw a low, dark shape speed out of sight from under the table and into the kitchen. It was black with a kind of dark orange fur stripe, sort of. I have never heard of some shit like this. Sounds like my cat, though. Whoa, I thought. The cat knocked over a box or something and ran into the kitchen. Okay, yeah, a cat. They had a cat calico named Topsy that was semi-feral and true evil, but that's also another story. The fur color of what I saw would have been sort of right. Everyone was looking around and asking what the hell was that. That was the cat, I said. I saw her bolt into the kitchen. Zoom. Must have knocked something over. Can't be Topsy, said my aunt. She's over here. Surely enough, the evil cat was sleeping on the windowsill near my uncle. I was suddenly confused. Everyone was confused. Then what did I see? I asked. I went over to the table, but nothing had fallen over. There was nothing to fall over. Dining table was with chairs. Chairs were where they were supposed to be. It was perplexing. I know that everyone else heard it. I told them exactly what I saw, but I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, which is odd, as I was 17 and hardly getting infirm. Did you see something and then it was gone? Asked my aunt. Yup, sounds about right. The episode put a stop to family frivolity for a bit, but we recovered. Later, I helped load presents into Cuz's truck in the, I'm not kidding, minus 36-degree night. I just filled it in my brain as a hallucination or mind trick. Years later, I learned of shadow people and things that go bump in the night. One paranormal writer wrote of a similar experience while investigating a haunted restaurant. Right in front of him, a loud thud and a dark shape that ran through the closed door to the restaurant's kitchen. The door never moved. Yep, I thought, sounds about right. Shadow people. I got a little tongue-tied there during some of that. I apologize. But both of those stories were from the same user, and they were both very interesting, very captivating. These were both from 3 years ago. I don't know if this person has posted any more. Follow for more scary stories. Good night.
What would you do if you gave in to an overwhelming urge to buy a porcelain doll, only to realize it wasn't the only thing you brought home? Scary story time. Hey everyone, I'm posting here because I am genuinely out of my depth, completely uncomfortable, and I need help from people who actually have experience with haunted objects. About a week ago, I was browsing through a local Goodwill. I wasn't looking for vintage toys, but I saw a porcelain doll on a shelf and felt this sudden, intense, and unexplainable urge to buy it. It wasn't a rational thought, it just felt like I had to take it home with me. There were no tags or information on it, but it had a built-in wind-up music box. I was looking for porcelain dolls, but I felt like I needed to take this one home. I live with my family and our dogs, and a few days after I brought it home, things started getting weird. They have been escalating rapidly in the last 48 hours. So here's what's been happening. First thing is the music box. It started randomly going off on its own. It doesn't play the whole song, just a slow, sporadic few notes, almost like someone is barely turning the key. I haven't wound it up once since bringing it home. The second thing is the environment. It has started knocking items completely off the table when it shouldn't have fallen, and the lights in our house have started flickering out of nowhere and stopped when I went to go check it out. Third thing is the dogs. We have dogs, and while one of them will sniff the doll and seems perfectly fine sleeping in the room with it, the physical activity around the house is getting way too intense. Fourth thing is the atmosphere. The heavy feeling of being watched is constant now. It feels like eyes are boring into me from whatever room the doll is in. And lastly is the pendulum. Out of desperation to figure out what was happening, I bought a pendulum to ask it some questions. The answers I got indicate that it's a spirit of a child and that it claims to be a positive, benevolent entity. But I don't want to take any chances because today it got physical. Throughout the day today, I have physically felt something touch my knee, my shoulder, and my back. Even if it claims to be a positive child spirit, I know that negative entities often mimic children to drop your guard, and I do not want to continue hosting this thing in our family home. I don't want to just throw it in the trash or donate it back to pass this on to another unsuspecting family, but I'm also worried that destroying it or casting it out might make it angry. I'm going to cleanse the doll for now with incense, as I am nervous about having it in my house. Is there anyone here with actual experience dealing with haunted or possessed objects who is willing to take this doll off my hands? Edit. The doll was cleansed, me and my room were also cleansed with sage, and the doll is being shipped off to a new home today. I think it was trying to attach itself to me, which would not have been great, and did not want to be cleansed at all. My head hurt at the thought of doing it, and while I was doing it. I am no longer getting nightmares about the doll, and the room feels way lighter, and no weird things as of now are happening. I do feel as I should sage my house, though, once the doll is out of my possession, and maybe my room again. The rest of the house does not feel as light as my room does, which makes sense since it was flickering the lights in another room than the one it resided in for my attention. And that's the end of the story. So do you think the doll chose its owner, or was this all just a coincidence? So this story was posted on the Haunted Dolls subreddit, and OP actually included a picture of the doll. So I will put the picture either on the video, or if it's not in the video, then check the comments. I will post the picture of the doll in the comments so you guys can see as well. So yeah, let me know your thoughts below if you ever experienced any haunted objects or toys or dolls or mirrors, because that's a thing apparently. Let me know what you think. I love chatting and asking questions with you guys if you've had experiences. Also, if you have your own spooky experience that you would like for me to read, you could send it to my email. But yeah, let me know your thoughts below.
One evening, my brother came to me terrified. He said he had heard something moving around inside and outside of our house. He looked and sounded genuinely scared, so I decided to go investigate. I went and looked at the security camera footage since I had cameras all over our house. Suddenly, as I was checking one of the outdoor cameras, I saw what my brother had heard, and I became equally terrified. This photo was taken in Adelaide prison. I took many pictures, and when we got out and reviewed our photos, one of them seemed to have this strange figure right in front of us. The next picture, which was taken seconds apart, had no sign of this figure. Last year, I bought a Chucky doll, and I kept it safe on my shelf in my room. On June 26th, Chucky fell off the shelf on its own. After it fell off the shelf on its own, it also started talking on its own. But for Chucky to talk, I have to press a button on him. I turned him around and I looked at his on and off buttons and realized I had forgotten to turn him off. Thinking nothing of this, I turned him off. But he kept talking. Back in 2017, me and my family went to this big park near a mountain. The mountain was famous for being haunted, and many people believed it was haunted by the spirit of a young girl who had sadly fallen off the mountain. People often said to avoid going there at night, but my family didn't believe in that kind of stuff. So we went there and started taking photos. After going through the photos that I took, I realized that a lot of them came out blurry, so I started deleting them. But in one of these photos, I noticed a girl standing right behind my cousin. We were the only ones in the area.
Helen then tells Steven that she has to show him something, and she is visibly rattled. She rolls up her sleeve and reveals a large red and bruised bite mark. She didn't know how she got it, just that it had showed up in her sleep. Steven knew that they were running out of time and that he had to find help for Helen as soon as possible. That being said, Steven and Helen did not have the easiest time finding help.
Oh, yeah. Very, see why.
Yeah. Well, people are scared. This is when Steven and Helen decide to gather people themselves and create their own group of investigators. They were all dedicated to helping Helen. They called themselves MPR, Missouri Paranormal Research. They vowed that they would work on a case until they found their client closure, and their first client would be Helen.
It's an awful first client to have.
Yeah. From then on, a member of MPR stayed with Helen at all times.
It's dedication.
What was happening was really taking a toll on her, including her health. One night while Stephen was staying with Helen, they began to hear noises from upstairs. Stephen made his way to the top of the stairs when he found himself toe to toe with a large black mist hovering over his head. Stephen could feel its negativity and he began to feel nauseous, but he decided to stand his ground and stand in its path. A few moments later, it began to swirl and then dissipated. Stephen immediately passed out.
That'll do it.
He was really scared.
Well, yeah.
MPR continued to help Helen and experienced many strange things while they did. Hot spots, cold spots, appliances turning on or off on their own, items disappearing from one room only to appear in another. Stranger still, the paranormal activity began to take on religious connotations, which reminds me of the Bell Witch. For instance, there was a strange phone call between Helen's mother and Helen's phone, where her mother heard Helen utter a prayer and then hang up.
That is so creepy.
That being said, Helen hadn't actually spoken with her mother. She actually wasn't even home when the phone call was made.
Yuck. So creepy.
On another instance, Helen and Stephen had been sitting upstairs when something very large moved past them and said Jesus in a low, guttural voice.
Jesus. Like that, maybe?
I don't know.
Jesus.
Ooh, probably like that.
Yeah.
They quickly went downstairs.
That's what I...
Yeah, exactly. All of these events continued to take a toll on Helen. She became more and more tired and her smile faded more and more. Stephen felt like she was slipping away from them.
Ugh, they gotta just get her out of the house. But I get what they're trying to do.
Yeah. On another night, Stephen receives a call from Helen at 4 a.m. and she's crying. She tells him the night before she had woken up to Kelly, their daughter, standing at the foot of their bed. Kelly hadn't looked like herself and had been staring at Helen and Charlie.
God, that's creepy.
Then she tells Stephen about a dream that she's been having.
I found this overgrown entrance while out on a hike, so decided to head in and explore it. But right away, things got pretty creepy. What was that noise? Thinking it was probably just the wind, I headed inside and began to explore. I followed this long weaving tunnel that led me through a chamber filled with these huge metal doors until I reached this very long staircase leading deeper underground. This place is enormous. Heading down to the bottom, I was then met with another, even longer tunnel that eventually led me to this massive metal door. But passing through it, I was about to find something else quite creepy. Look at this place. That is crazy, all the footprints. But I continued deeper, and soon the condition of the tunnel got worse, until it branched out to lots of different rooms. But I still had no idea what this place was, so I wanted to find some clues. What's this door to? What was in here? But finally, after continuing deeper into the tunnel, I did find something I recognized. These definitely used to be the toilets. This place was massive, and the more I explored, the more creepy stuff began to happen. I'm gonna have to head back soon, because I've left my bag outside, and I've been in here for ages. Finally, I did reach the end of the tunnel and found a collection of small rooms. In this one, it actually looked like the door had been blown off. On the other side of the room, I found this tunnel that led me back outside at a different point in the forest. I still have no idea what this place could have been, but whatever it was, they really wanted to keep it secret.
So I heard the words cargo, shipment, transportation, but there's something sort of sinister underneath all of that. It feels like it was a genuine business, but also a front for something else. Feels like there may have been human beings involved in this transportation. Unfortunately, those footsteps on the wall, that felt very recent. That feels like someone else had been down there. That doesn't feel like it had anything to do with the time frame that I'm picking up on. This was utilized almost like an office. There wasn't anything sinister that went on in this location, but what they were putting together, what they were developing, the business that they ran, like it moved through this space, and that was questionable. It feels like this place may have been raided. It feels like it was left, and or it was left quickly. did not last long. This, whatever business they were running, it did not last long. They did a lot of damage in a short amount of time, but it was less than 5 years. This business was generated by one man, and I don't feel like he came from money. I feel like he built this up and had a history of generating some wealth through questionable means. And then this transportation started to take off, and he utilized this as a bunker, in a sense, to shield him from authorities. This is a white man. He feels like a heavy set, maybe 6 foot, light brown hair, white skin, not a family run business, just him. And honestly, a lot of the people that worked for him were suspicious of what he was doing, but wasn't fully aware of everything he was doing and capable of had he not been stopped. It feels like there was someone within this business that called the authorities on him.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me give you guys a story time of the grandmother who saw witchcraft at 12 a.m. and she lost her teeth in the morning. Remember I told you I have an aunt who's a prophet? This is her mom, by the way. So guys, in the villages there is a place where we fetch water to wash our clothes, as well as do household chores. It's not water that we drink, right? We go fetch that water at a particular pond. I don't know if to call it a pond or what, but it's got reeds and all of that. It's not cute water. It's that water that looks green. You get it? And there are things walking inside that kind of water. So this grandmother woke up at 12 a.m. for some reason, and she was like, listen, I want to go fetch water because I want to wash in the morning. And they were like, I will no, you can't go, wait for the morning and then you go. And she was insisting, because she's a grown woman, there's nothing they can do to her. So she opened the door and took her wheelbarrow as well as 2 20-liter bottles, and she went to the thingy, to the where we fetch the water. I don't know what to call it. So she was on her way there. She was walking, pushing her wheelbarrow at 12 a.m. mind you. She's pushing her wheelbarrow and she sees people passing her wearing all black, and she's confused as to where these people are going, right? Because they are walking very fast, by the way. So she pushes her wheelbarrow, whatever, and when she gets to the pond, she finds people surrounding it. Those people that were speed walking wearing all black, she finds them surrounding it. They're standing in a circle, and there is a fire inside of that pond. Don't ask me how they started it, but there is fire in the middle of the water. They have a fire going or whatever, and they're just standing there. And when she got there, she stood there and she looked at them, and they told her that, you see, you have seen things that you're not supposed to see, and you're going to reap what you're sowing. So she didn't understand what they meant, and she just decided to look at them and just go back home. She didn't see their faces, by the way. She decided to go back home, and when she went back home, she woke up the next morning and all her teeth fell out, and she couldn't speak. For a couple of days, she couldn't speak. And then I think they took her somewhere. And then eventually her voice kept on coming back bit by bit. And then that's when she was able to tell the story. Because obviously these people's intention was to mute her so that she can't tell the people what she saw. You know? I think the only reason they let her go was the fact that she did not see who they were. And obviously when they went to this traditional healer, the traditional healer was like, people always tell on themselves. They always tell on themselves. You will see who was there, who was attending that function. And if it's anybody close to you, they will tell on themselves. And so the granny is like, at some point, there's this friend of hers that came to check on her and was like, oh, you lost your teeth. And then she was speaking. And she was kind of shocked that baby girl is speaking. And she was like, oh, you lost your teeth. Hey, these people should have muted you so that you don't go around telling people what happened to you, because, you're not supposed to see. There are certain things that you're not supposed to see. And that's how they found out that she was part of the squad.
There are no words to describe quite how disturbing this is. Truly, I feel like there's nothing that I could tell you to prepare you. But I do want to give a trigger warning here. We're talking about attacks on schools, specifically one that occurred back in 2012 at Sandy Hook Elementary School. So if this is a sensitive topic for you and you need to skip this video, I completely understand. Again, your mental health is always #1 priority. Skip this video. I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. I mean it. I love you. Earlier this year in Florida, authorities received a tip letting them know that a student was planning to murder another student in a bathroom bathroom at Lake Brantley High School. As soon as the police department received the tip, they moved immediately. Lake Brantley is a large public high school of more than 2,700 students located around 12 miles north of Orlando. And within 24 hours, that school would be on the headlines of every major news outlet in the country, because what investigators were about to unravel was so much deeper than they could have ever imagined. It was a premeditated murder plot rooted in romanticizing the worst of the worst criminals, a disturbing ritual, and a friendship between two teenage girls who really did bring out the worst in each other. 15-year-old Isabel Valdez and 14-year-old Lois Lippert were both students at Lake Brantley High School. Isabel went by the nickname Jimmy among her friend group. She was a sophomore and presented
might have known the story of real-life boogeyman
herself to the outside world as social and outgoing. But there is a disconnect in the way that she wanted to present herself versus the way that she actually felt inside. This is a quote from her, quote, "I was never really shy, I just hated people. I pretended to be a socialite to make you guys happy," end quote. Lois was 14 years old, so she was 1 year younger than Isabel, and the two of them have been described to be best friends. Now, a notable hobby that Lois had that you should know about is drawing. She loved to hand draw sketches on paper all the time. That in itself would be quite innocent, but it's the opposite of that when you learned what kind of drawing she liked to do, because she would draw people, sometimes infamous criminals such as Elliot Rodgers or Jeffrey Dahmer, sometimes classmates and or even friends, in very, very, very violent, disturbing ways. They are very uncomfortable drawings, even just to see, let alone when you begin to imagine what must have been going through her head when she was putting the pen to the paper. Then we have her best friend Isabel, who had a very, very dark fascination with criminals, and she specifically had this really big romantic fascination with the guy responsible for what happened at Sandy Hook back in 2012, where there were 26 victims, 6 adults and 20 children, who woke up, attended school, and never made it out of there. Isabel romanticized the individual responsible for that so much. She looked up to him, she respected him, she dreamt about him, she wanted to be with him. So much so that she was willing to commit a ritual, sacrifice one of her classmates in hopes that doing that would mean that she would resurrect the guy responsible for Sandy Hook. A life for a life is what she became convinced of, and she thought that the perfect person to help her with this new plan of hers was none other than her best friend, Lois Lippert. By 2025, Lois herself also had become fixated on this criminal through an online community she referred to as TCC, the True Crime Community. She would later go on to say that this community had a very, very terrible influence on her and made her want to do bad things. So when Isabel tells her about this plan of sacrificing their classmate, she wasn't only on board, but she became really, really excited to make it happen. Now, back to Isabel. According to the police report, Isabel told investigators that she used to be able to hear this specific criminal's voice inside of her head, but as of recent, she no longer could. And she believed that murdering a specific classmate who she thought physically resembled this criminal that they both loved so much would bring his voice back, resurrect him, or both. And if they successfully were able to do it, Isabel would finally get to be with him and get to hear his voice again. Oh, because he's no longer here. I don't know if I mentioned that, you could probably tell, but he's no longer here, so her entire motive for wanting to bring him back to life was because he was her soulmate and they could finally be reunited. And she referred to this murder plot that they planned out as a, quote, fair and beautiful scene of devotion. So Isabel and Lois start having conversations about how they're going to commit this ritual, how they're going to plan this murder out. And the plan that they come up with is as follows. Well, first they need to pick out the victim, which was easy because it was a male classmate that they often saw, and the next step was then to watch him for weeks to learn his routine and learn where and when he walked around specific areas of the school. After learning that, the plan that they come up with was that Isabel was going to wait for him in the boys' bathroom at the school after second period. She was going to stand there and wait for him to walk by like she knew that he would, and then she would pull him into the bathroom. Once inside, with they allegedly attempted to make as sharp as possible, she would either him in the stomach or across his neck, ending his life. She would leave flowers at the scene. She would put on latex gloves beforehand. She would use trash bags and wipes to clean up the scene afterwards, and that would be that. She also was expected for them both to be arrested, but they were okay with that. As far as what Lois would do, well, her role instructed by Isabel would be to bring a chocolate bar as a snack, I guess, and the flowers to place on top of the body because that would be their funeral for their victim, among other things. Lois also helped in the process of preparing the weapon to make sure that it was sharp enough. And the plan also had a final chapter, which was to brag about what they did, spreading their story through the TCC community after the attack. But they, again, expected that they were going to get arrested, so I'm not sure what their plan exactly was with that. But they spoke about this in the patrol car after their arrest, saying directly, quote, "We were supposed to spread our story around the TCC." So the murder they were planning didn't only feel like a ritual, it also weirdly felt like this performance that they intended to do for an audience. Like they wanted people to look up to them for what they did. So their plan was ready, and the morning of January 23rd, 2026 began like any other school day at Lake Brantley. Students were arriving, lockers were opening, everyone was heading to class. Meanwhile, inside her backpack, Isabel carried the weapon, the latex gloves, trash bags, and wipes. Lois had the chocolate bar, the flowers, etc. in her bag, and they were ready to go. Investigators estimated that they arrived at school approximately 20 minutes before they intended to carry out the attack. But the tip that I told you about happened very, very late the night before, so law enforcement officials were already in motion. The tip had come in just after midnight, I believe, the night before, and it came from a student who was claiming that Isabel had told them exactly what she was planning on doing, and that student expressed their concern and their belief that it was actually going to happen and that Isabel was actually planning on going through with it. Isabel Valdez gets pulled out of class to speak with the assistant principal before officers arrived. Once the officers did arrive, both Isabel and Lois got arrested on school grounds. They got taken and put in the back of the same police car. And by the way, the student they were targeting is alive, unharmed, and he had absolutely no idea of what almost happened to him. I cannot fathom being him and learning about what they were planning on doing to him, but I'm happy to say that he is alive, he is safe, and he's okay. What happened next, when they were both sitting in the back of that police car, is perhaps one of the most shocking pieces of this case, because there is interior footage of inside the patrol car that has been released, and it shows the two of them, Isabel and Lois, in the back seat minutes after their arrest, laughing, cracking up about the entire thing. And it's not like nervous laughter, it's like full-on joking laughter. They're like having fun. They're in a great mood. They're visibly so excited about the situation that they found themselves in. Lois saying, quote, "This is such a bonding experience. I love this." The conversations that they had in that car while sitting in the backseat covered a plethora of subjects. They discussed the anonymous tip who had reported them. They talked about their plan and how great of a plan it was. They talked about going to prison and if they were going to get to go to the same prison together, and when they found out that they were, they got so excited about doing their makeup and if they were going to look good and beautiful in their mugshots, about their love and passion for criminals. It was a lot, and I can guarantee you that whatever you're thinking in your head, make it 100 times worse. It is just about as bad as it can get. You guys can look up the video yourselves. But again, they're laughing, giggling, smiling the entire time. Isabel even flat out saying, quote, "I don't feel guilty for my actions." And because they were so jolly and so happy about the entire thing, once in custody, both were denied bond. When they were officially questioned, both of them confessed to everything fully, which is why we have all this information, because they spoke proudly and in detail about their intentions, and yet they both pleaded not guilty to their charges. After their arrest, there were two letters that emerged, both written by Isabel. She wrote them at different stages in completely different narratives, which honestly, when you read them both, they show one of the most psychologically complex characters in a person. The first one was a letter that she wrote to her parents before the attack. It read, quote, "Dear Mama and Papa, I'm sorry for what I'm gonna do." She told her parents that they had been, quote, "the most perfect parents ever." She apologized for not being a better child. She described hating people, being forced to talk as torture, and saying that she deserved more than what was coming to her, describing herself as disgusting, cruel, and useless. She ended it by bringing up the criminal that she wanted to bring back to life, saying that she loved him, and saying, quote, "We're soulmates, just waiting to be reunited once more." The second letter arrived in May of 2026. This one was addressed not to her parents, but to the judge that was overseeing her case, and the tone in this one was completely different. She wrote, quote, "I'm very remorseful for my actions." She described the isolation of jail, cut off from people and the internet, as having changed her perspective entirely. And she said about her best friend Lois, quote, "We both got worse together," unquote. So in that letter, she was showing remorse for the first time, but that isn't going to cut it when you compare it to how excited and happy she was for 30 long minutes in the back of the police car when she first got arrested. So on June 24th, 2026, so about 5 months after they were first arrested, a grand jury met to formally review the case. A grand jury is a group of people who look at the evidence and decide whether there is enough evidence or not to officially charge someone with crimes. When they all agreed that there was enough, they issued what is called an indictment, basically an official document listing all of the charges. When they first arrested them both back in January, there were only a handful of charges, but by June, after 5 months of the investigation, that number had grown significantly, all the way up to 27 separate charges split between the two of them. The investigation also revealed that the alleged conduct did not stop in January. According to the indictment, things were happening between January and May of 2026, meaning the investigation uncovered behavior that continued even after the original arrest, or that predated it further back than investigators first realized. And when they were first arrested, investigators had identified 6 students as potential victims, but by the time the grand jury met, a 7th 7th have been identified, meaning that one more person had come forward or been identified through the investigation, one more person than the public had previously heard about. And that's still not all, because there is the entire other investigation that was being conducted on Isabel Valdez. That investigation began when police flagged a concerning digital file on Isabel's phone. When the examination of the content found on her phone was completed, it resulted in 10 additional charges for Isabel for possession of cesium. Isabel was already in custody when that investigation was completed, but on top of the additional charges, she was also banned from contacting anyone under the age of 18, from accessing the internet, and from being present anywhere where children could be. So that's where we are now, and no trial date has been set that I could find, so we'll have to see what happens, but yeah. So disturbing. Obviously, so glad that nothing happened to that student, but so scary to have two people that are so young having such sick and disturbing, twisted things that go on in their minds. Yeah, they need help, serious help. But that's it for me today. Let me know if you guys have heard about this case and let me know what your thoughts are on it. And yeah, thank you for spending time with me today. Hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.